Are you a conspiracy theorist? Well, if you're not, I want to ask you, what's taking you so long? It took me a while to, I guess, embrace the title conspiracy theorist. But you know, conspiracy theorists have been around for a long time. And in fact, some of the original conspiracy theorists were in the days of the Bible. You think about this. What makes a conspiracy? And what makes somebody a conspiracy theorist? A lot of times it's just time. Time from an event, time from a revelation or something that somebody thought about, or maybe somebody lived that and they passed it down through generation after generation. And then time, you know, when there's separation between the event and what actually happened, people begin to doubt it. So, you know, I'm a believer. I look at the world through a biblical lens. And like I said, it took me a while to become what's known nowadays as a modern conspiracy theorist. But as I began to look at it, I began to realize, man, they're batting 1,000. I mean, the conspiracy theorists are really batting close to 1,000. They're not always right. But when you think about what makes a conspiracy theorist, a lot of times is time away from the actual event, and it's been passed down from generations, and because no one experienced it themselves, they begin to doubt it. I just started thinking this morning about, you know, people hundreds of years away and even thousands of years away from Adam and Eve. Well, nobody can comprehend the Garden of Eden. Nobody can comprehend, you know, that God just spoke all this stuff into existence and that it happened. So over time, people who had known Adam, because you think Adam lived almost to be 1,000 years old. So for a long time, you know, people said, yeah, my daddy knew him, or my granddaddy knew him. My granddaddy told me about when he went over to Adam's house one day and hanging out. So, you know, I'm making this up, but you understand how stories get passed down. And then eventually the generations that have no direct ties to Adam died off. So the conversations went from, you know, I know Jimmy down there. Jimmy knew Adam. If you really want to believe, if you want to know what to believe, go talk to Jimmy, because he knew Adam. Well, Jimmy died off. There was nobody that knew anybody directly tied to Adam and Eve. So then the story became a conspiracy theory. And then you think about the flood. You think about all the people that knew Noah, knew of the effects of the flood. And then you think about how long it took to repopulate the world after the flood. But eventually, all those that had direct ties to those that knew Noah or knew someone, and rather than that replenishing of the earth post-flood, died off. I think about things like Elijah calling fire down from heaven on Mount Carmel. You know, people that were there, people that saw the fire. I mean, nobody had to believe that there was a miracle that happened because they saw it. If you saw the fire come down, you know, I've always said a man with an argument is always at the mercy of a man with an experience. So if you were on top of Mount Carmel and you survived the cut, if you will, of post fire, when the prophets of Baal were destroyed, but you saw the fire, no one's ever going to be able to convince you that there wasn't fire on Mount Carmel, right? But once you're gone, and once your generation, your descendants are gone, and maybe even to the third generation is gone, your grandchildren, there's nobody left that had direct ties to the fire of Mount Carmel, and Mount Carmel becomes a conspiracy theory. The 10 plagues, I mean, come on, y'all. If you lived through the 10 plagues, then you believed them. But those are crazy things to believe. Frogs, boils upon everybody, total darkness all over Egypt, but yet there's light in Goshen. And of course, the death of the firstborn. I mean, yeah, once you are past that, it becomes a conspiracy, and I could go on and on. Then you start thinking about things like when people start seeing visions, and you hear about Ezekiel seeing angels, and then also what's known as a wheel within a wheel becomes a conspiracy. Some people believe that was a UFO or something like that. Daniel in the lion's den, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego being thrown into a fiery furnace and not getting burned and not even having the smell of fire. All of them became conspiracies. And to this day, people consider them to be conspiracies. They were like, it's impossible. Well, the greatest conspiracy that's ever existed, of course, was Jesus Christ, is what's known as a conspiracy. Because you think about it. His story is based on an impossible beginning and an impossible ending. But of course, we Christians know it really wasn't an ending, but I'm talking about here on this earth. So, we all know that you can't have a baby without a man and a woman coming together and a seed and an egg. But there was something known as the virgin birth. Well, to Mary, it was not a conspiracy because Mary experienced it. Even to Joseph, it wasn't a conspiracy. And I believe to most believers that became believers in the story of Christianity early on, they had no trouble believing it. But think about the small group there. It's really just Mary and Joseph, the baby Jesus, maybe, Elizabeth, John the Baptist's mother, and a few others. Just a very small group knew of the actual story. So when people started telling the story, it would have been very, very difficult for people to believe. So the virgin birth became a conspiracy. Then, of course, he lived his life and at age 30 began his ministry. And for 3.5 years, he preached, and then he was crucified. And people saw him die. They saw his body being taken down. They saw his body being put into the borrowed tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. And for 3 days, it was sealed. And then came the ultimate conspiracy, and that was the resurrection. So, when I call the ultimate conspiracy, it's not a conspiracy to me because I have experienced the power of the resurrection. It's still very real to me. I believe it with all my heart. It's not just a man-made story. But thousands of years later, that's what people will say today. They'll be like, well, I don't believe. That's impossible. It's impossible for somebody to come back from the dead. It's impossible for somebody to be born of a virgin. But that conspiracy didn't begin in our time. After the crucifixion of Jesus, it was already a doubting in it. Thomas is known as Doubting Thomas. He's like, I don't believe it. I won't believe it until I see the scars in his hands and the scar in his side, until I see the wounds on his body. People were already doubting the resurrection not long after the ascension to Jesus. The Bible tells us in Matthew chapter 28, verse 11, now while this was the original conspiracy theory, let me put it this way. I've listed all these different kinds of ways that technically it became a conspiracy theory. But in my opinion, we have a biblical record of the original seeding of a narrative of a conspiracy theorist, labeling someone to believe something that they're nothing but a conspiracy theorist. And this is how they get started. And this was in Matthew chapter 28, verse 11. This is talking about the resurrection. It says, now while they were going, behold, some of the guards came up into the city and reported to the chief priests all the things that had happened. We're talking about the resurrection. And when they had assembled with the elders and consulted together, they had a large sum of money. They gave a large sum of money to the soldiers, saying, tell them, his disciples came at night and stole him away while we slept. And if this comes to the governor's ears, we will appease him and make you secure. So they took the money and did as they were instructed. And this saying is commonly reported among the Jews until this day. It became the accepted narrative. The accepted narrative was that the body of Jesus was stolen. Two major conspiracy theories, narratives that were sown in that day that still survive to this day. But this lie, there's two lies that's being told. Number one lie that was sown and is accused those that don't believe this as conspiracy theorists is that he survived the crucifixion and that he was eventually taken down. And some people believe he traveled to India or different places and hid out, and he had a wife and had a family and all this. And that's what came of that whole book. What was it called? Da Vinci Code. It became a movie and all this. So, and it was all about the fact that that Constantine and the early Roman Church created this conspiracy to hide the truth. And the truth was that Jesus really did marry Mary and have children through her and all of this. And this whole resurrection, this whole holy thing that he was God was the conspiracy. And then, of course, the other conspiracy was what we just read in Matthew chapter 28, that the disciples stole his body, faked the resurrection, and he was eventually buried somewhere else. And then they started this fake religion based off of a fake story. So, What's harder to believe? That the truth keeps being passed down and has survived over 2,000 years, or that a lie has survived? How many times have you tried to, you personally told a lie, and then you try to tell the lie again, and people start trying to ask you questions about the lie, and you can't remember, you can't tell the story the same. You yourself can't even tell the story the same because it wasn't the truth. But the truth is the truth. The truth doesn't need a lie. You just tell the truth. So, you've heard the experiment where, you sit in a room of about 20 or 30 people and you whisper in one of their ears something and tell them to tell the next one exactly word for word what you said. And a lot of times, by the time you get all the way around the room, it's not even close to what it started out as. That is the way a lie exposes itself. A lie cannot survive. But the Bible and the truth of the resurrection has survived every skeptic, every kingdom, every hierarchy, all these years later, because it wasn't a conspiracy. But yet, the original believers in the resurrection were labeled conspiracy theorists. So, you fast forward today, and it's the same thing. When you believe that there is a spirit realm, when you believe that there could be portals, that demons and angels are coming out from one dimension to the other, that don't make sense in the natural. Everything needs to be explained scientifically. Everything needs to be proven. Well, they want to say, believe the science, trust the science. The science is settled. But how many times has the science really been settled? Science is never settled. And we were told to believe the science when we went through the wah-wah, and now look what the truth is. The truth is the science was a lie. But guess what came out eventually? The truth. The truth always wins. Truth walkers, truth talkers, truth livers, truth believers are not conspiracy theorists, but they are the first ones to be labeled conspiracy theorists because they don't line up with the narrative. They don't line up with the natural only. But see, we believe in the supernatural. We believe in the supernatural. Let's just be real. Is it hard for your flesh to believe that 3 Hebrew boys were thrown into a fiery furnace that was so hot that the people that threw them in was killed instantly, but yet they were not killed, and they were not burned, and they didn't even smell like smoke? Is that hard for you to believe in the natural? Of course it is. It takes faith. But that account and that story has persisted for thousands of years. Can I tell you, those are the reasons that they created this original conspiracy theory, that those that believe in the resurrection are kooky, they are quirky, they are backwoods, they are redneck, they are podunk, they are uneducated. Once you get enlightened, you will see the truth. Well, the Bible said that that's what would happen, that they would mock us, they would persecute us. But ultimately, the key to entry to heaven, the key to it all, is that you believe that Jesus Christ came, was born of a virgin. Listen, was born, this is the core of the gospel, that Jesus Christ was born of a virgin, lived a sinless life, was crucified on a cross for our sins, and died on that cross, and was placed into a tomb. 3 days later, he came back from the dead. That is the core of the gospel, and that is the core to the entrance to heaven. That is the core of the belief of having your name written in the Lamb's Book of Life. If you do not believe in those core principles, you're not going to heaven. But yet those core principles was what was labeled the original conspiracy theorists. So, are you a conspiracy theorist? Well, the world may call us that, but God calls us believers. So, when it comes to that world and the world we live in now, find you some conspiracy theorist friends, especially biblically based ones, and hook your wagon up to them, because they're the ones that see things in the future that's coming, because they look through it through a biblical worldview. So, we ain't woke. We certainly are awake. Thank you for hanging out with me while I'm sitting outside with my dogs on this beautiful day, just thinking about, am I a conspiracy theorist? Yes. See you later. We ain't